Berlin, 1954. You are 6 meters underground. It is dark. It is cold. The air smells like wet soil and old metal. You cannot stand up straight. The ceiling is too low. You have to crouch. You have to move carefully, because one wrong sound and everything is over. Somewhere above your head, Soviet soldiers are walking. You can hear them. Boots on the ground above you. Muffled voices. A truck rolling past. You hold your breath. You do not move. You wait. And then the sound fades, and you breathe again. You are in a tunnel. A tunnel that runs from the American side of Berlin all the way into Soviet territory. 300 meters of it. In secret. Over 6 months. And it works. For 11 months, it works perfectly. The cables above you carry the most sensitive military communications. This is a true story. It happened in a city that was cut in half, in a time when two sides of the world were watching each other so closely that neither one could breathe. The war has been over for 8 years, but Berlin does not feel like peace. The city is cut in half. A border runs right through the middle of it. Not a clean border, not a line on a map that you only see from the air. On one side, rebuilding. On the other, soldiers. The city is the same city, but it is two completely different worlds, pressed right up against each other. Inside the CIA, there's a growing problem, a serious problem. The problem is silence. The Soviets are moving. New military plans are being made. New decisions at the highest level, and the CIA cannot hear any of it. So someone starts thinking differently. If you cannot get people in, maybe you do not need people. Maybe you need something else. Someone looks at a map of Berlin, and someone asks a question. What is under the city? The answer is cables. The plan takes shape fast. You dig a tunnel from the American side. You run it under the border, and then you listen. The CIA calls it Operation Gold. Before the digging starts, there is a meeting. London, December 1953. The most senior intelligence officers from both sides of the Atlantic sit down in a room together. The CIA and MI6. They go through the entire plan. The route of the tunnel, the target cables, the cover story for the warehouse, the timeline, the technical equipment. And in that room, on the British side of the table, there is a man named George Blake. He is an MI6 officer. He has been working for British intelligence for years. He speaks multiple languages. He is also working for the KGB. Within weeks of that meeting, he passes everything to his KGB handler in London. The Soviets receive the full plan. Before a single brick has been laid, they know about the tunnel. They could reroute the cables. They could quietly arrest the CIA officers involved. But any of those options would also raise a question. How did they know? And the answer to that question leads directly to George Blake. And George Blake is too valuable to lose. He is inside British intelligence, so they make their decision. They do nothing. They let the Americans build the tunnel. The warehouse goes up first, a plain, ordinary-looking building in the Rudow district of West Berlin. Nothing unusual about it from the outside. Inside, the Americans fill it with radar equipment. Underneath it, the digging starts in the summer of 1954. The work happens at night mostly. The noise is covered by the equipment running above. The dirt is removed in bags. Thousands of bags, stacked carefully inside the warehouse, where nobody outside can see them. The tunnel is 1.5 meters wide. They go back to their regular lives. The tunnel grows slowly, 30 meters, then 60, then 100. The soil under Berlin is difficult. There are old pipes to avoid, Old foundations, old war debris still buried in the ground. Every meter has to be checked carefully before the next meter starts. One wrong move and the ground above collapses. One wrong move and a street opens up, and Soviet soldiers are looking down into an American spy tunnel. They attach the taps. The taps are designed to draw signal from the cables without interrupting them. And now, in a small underground chamber, 6 meters below East Berlin, American and British equipment records every single word. The first intercept comes through in May 1955. And what comes through those cables is extraordinary. Soviet military orders, conversations between officers who have no idea anyone is listening. In Washington, the analysts cannot keep up. They are working around the clock, translating from Russian, translating from German, decoding military terminology, trying to understand the structure of what they are hearing. The intelligence is flowing faster than they can process it. 50,000 reels of tape, recorded over 368 days. 50,000 reels. The CIA calls it the most productive intelligence operation they have ever run. They brief the president. They brief senior military commanders. The intelligence shapes decisions. It changes assessments. It moves pieces on the board. And the whole time, the Soviets know the tunnel is there. The whole time, they are managing what goes through those cables. Carefully, not completely. They cannot make it too clean. If every conversation is perfectly controlled, the intelligence looks too good. The Americans might get suspicious, so they let real things through. With an invisible hand on the dial, adjusting, deciding, choosing what the Americans hear and what they do not. April 1956. Berlin has had a wet spring. The ground is soft. A Soviet maintenance crew is working in the Alt-Glyanica district, doing ordinary work on a Tuesday morning. One of them notices the ground is softer than it should be. A slight depression in the soil, just a few centimeters. He calls his supervisor. His supervisor calls the military liaison. The military liaison arrives with soldiers. They bring shovels. They start digging, and then they break through into an empty space. A tunnel, lined with steel, running west toward the American sector. The soldiers climb down. They move along the tunnel with flashlights, and at the end of it, in a small chamber below the cables, they find the tap. They find the recording equipment. They find American and British military markings on the gear. Within hours, Soviet journalists are invited to the tunnel. The story is on the front page of every newspaper in the world. The United States of America dug a secret spy tunnel under Berlin, and they were caught. In Washington, the CIA gets the news. The tunnel is found. The operation is over. The reaction inside the agency is complicated. 11 months of intelligence, 50,000 reels of tape, most of it already analyzed, already sent to the people who needed it, already used to make decisions. The tunnel is gone, but the intelligence is not. The question nobody wants to ask out loud is how the Soviets found it. The ground collapsed, yes, but the depression in the soil could have gone unnoticed for months longer. The cables were not interrupted. There was no sign of the tap on the Soviet side. The maintenance crew had no specific reason to dig exactly where they dug. The question sits in the back of certain rooms, in Washington and London, has to be looked at differently. The analysts go back through the transcripts. The line between genuine intelligence and managed intelligence runs somewhere through those 50,000 reels. 5 years after the tunnel is found, a man stands in a London courtroom. George Blake. He has been exposed by a Polish defector who gave his name to British intelligence. When the British confronted him, he confessed. quickly, almost with relief. He does not deny anything. He does not try to explain it away. He says he believed in what he did. He says he believes the West is the aggressor. He says that after being captured in Korea in 1950 and held for 3 years, he came to understand the Soviet cause. He says he chose a side. He says he has no regrets. The judge looks at this man, this calm, articulate, unremarkable man, who sat in a London meeting room in December 1953 and memorized a tunnel plan and handed it to the enemy. The judge sentences him to 42 years, the longest sentence ever handed down by a British court. 1 year for every agent believed to have been betrayed. Blake receives the sentence without expression. He is taken to Wormwood Scrubs prison. He begins his sentence. He is a model prisoner, and in 1966, 5 years into his 42-year sentence, he escapes. A rope ladder is thrown over the prison wall from outside. He climbs it. A car is waiting on the other side. He gets in. He is driven across Europe, and then to Moscow, where the KGB is waiting for him. He never returns to any Western country. He lives quietly in Moscow, that the tunnel was a crime against the Soviet people, that he was not a traitor, that he was a man of conscience. He dies in Moscow in 2020. Here is what the Berlin Tunnel actually was. The CIA said it was one of the greatest intelligence operations ever run. They pointed to the 50,000 reels. They pointed to the 11 months of Soviet military communications. They pointed to the intelligence that shaped American strategy during one of the most dangerous periods of the Cold War. They called it a success. The KGB said it was one of the greatest counterintelligence operations ever run. They pointed to the fact that they knew about it from the start. They pointed to 11 months of carefully managed intelligence. They pointed to a spy they protected for years by allowing the operation to continue. They called it a success. Both of them are right. That is the thing about the Berlin Tunnel. It succeeded completely, for both sides, at the same time, using the same tunnel, the same cables, the same 50,000 reels of tape. One operation, 2 victories, and somewhere in the gap between those 2 victories are the real secrets. The things the Soviets actually said to each other when they forgot for a moment that someone was listening. The genuine orders, the genuine fears, the genuine mistakes, buried inside 50,000 reels, alongside all the things they deliberately said, because they knew exactly who was listening, mixed together, indistinguishable, in a CIA archive that very few people have ever seen. Today, in the Alt-Glienicke district of Berlin, there is a small museum. You can visit it. You can see photographs of the tunnel. You can see a section of the original steel lining behind glass. You can read the information boards. School groups come. Tourists come. People take pictures. They look at the photographs of American soldiers digging in the dark, of Soviet officers walking through the tunnel with flashlights, of the equipment laid out on tables after the discovery. They look at these photographs and they think they understand the story. They do not understand the story. The story is not about a tunnel. The story is about a decision made in Moscow in the winter of 1953. A decision to let an enemy operation run, to protect a single man, to trade the exposure of their secrets for the protection of their spy. And the question that decision leaves behind is the one that nobody has ever fully answered. If you hear 11 months of conversations from the other side of the Iron Curtain, and you cannot be certain how much of it was real. What do you actually know? You have 50,000 reels. You have hundreds of transcripts. You have years of analysis. And you still cannot be certain, because the best intelligence operation is one where the other side believes they are winning. And in Berlin, in 1954 and 1955 and 1956, both sides believed exactly that. George Blake died at 98. The CIA director who approved the operation died in 1987. He never knew about Blake. He went to his grave believing the tunnel was clean, believing the intelligence was real, believing they had heard the truth. The analysts who spent years going through the transcripts never reached a final conclusion. The files are still classified, most of them. The full truth of what was real, and what was managed, and what was somewhere in between, sits in an archive in Virginia, behind a classification level that has never been lifted. And somewhere in that archive, there are reels of tape that have never been played. Conversations recorded in 1955 that no human ear has ever heard. Nobody knows what is on them. Nobody knows if anyone ever will. The tunnel ran for 368 days. The question of what it actually captured has never been fully answered, and maybe that is the point. Maybe in a Cold War, the truth was never the objective. The feeling of knowing was. And both sides got that perfectly.